The child from another sky. They found the pod in the blue twilight of a frozen moon, a metal seed, half buried, where the wind had combed the ice into ribs. Commander Maeve Archer wanted to mark the coordinates and move on. The gravimeter was spiking. The ridge kept shedding slate like a bad thought, but Dr. Elias Ward was already down on one knee, frost hissing against his suit, both hands hovering above the tiny window like you hover above a sleeping child. Inside, something breathed. The glass was fogged from the inside, then cleared, and two eyes looked out wide, luminous, the green of tide pools at dawn. The rest of the face was wrong in the beautiful way life can be wrong. Faint gill lines at the neck, a silver down across the brow, a mouth too small to hold a lie. The pod registered no language, no registry, only a heartbeat knitting itself to the rhythm of the storm. "We can't leave it," Elias said. And Maeve hated that he was right, because the quiet part of the universe doesn't forgive you for walking past a cradle. They cut the pod free, while the ridge groaned, hauled it into the belly of the lander, and lit the engines. In the rear camera, the slope tore itself open and slid. By the time they docked with the research carrier Halcyon, the pod had warmed, and the thing inside had uncurled into something even more impossible, a baby. Limbs too long, fingers webbed like thin moons, chest rising with the stubbornness all babies are born with. Halcyon's med bay hummed into protocol. Maeve filed 6 reports to 6 different people who could make her life small. Elias wrapped the baby in a thermal blanket and fed it with a micro-drip like he was negotiating with winter. He asked the shipboard AI to play something soft. Some human lullaby so old it didn't remember who wrote it, and the baby's eyes followed the sound, as if notes had shapes. At 0300 hours, a narrowband ping slid through the Halcyon's long antennas, faint as breath on glass. Not a distress call. A request, polite as an open hand. It repeated every 90 seconds, then every 60, then every 30. Like a heartbeat, learning how to be brave, Maeve patched the ping 2 comes, and got static that had been taught how to count. Elias didn't hear it. He was too busy naming the baby. "Just a placeholder," he said, and then said it again, because he'd already fallen through the trapdoor of love. "Nova." The AI noted the ping's modulation and told them what nobody wanted. It wasn't random. Something out beyond the moon's shadow was measuring the Halcyon, learning its answers, adjusting its questions. "Parental signal?" Maeve asked, and the AI said maybe, in the voice it uses when the math is a hole in the floor. The board lit with an instruction from Central. "Secure the specimen, transmit bioskins, await escort, do not engage unknowns." Elias looked at the baby, at the thin blue veins, sketching maps under its skin, and said he would engage whoever wanted to take it away without asking nicely. The ping shifted again, turned into a tone that made every glass surface shiver, and for 3 seconds the lights dimmed. When they came back, the cradle was glowing, not bright, just a candle behind the skin, as if the baby were a lantern stuffed with stars. "Elias," Maeve said, "the way you say a friend's name when you need him to take the world seriously." He took a step toward the bulkhead, instead, listening with his whole body. "It's not a beacon," he said. "It's a song, a Kaland response. It's teaching us the other half." He tapped out a pattern on the console 3 short. One long like oceans on old shore's end. The ping paused, then answered in the same meter, then added a flourish at the end that didn't belong to any human alphabet. Nova stirred when the flourish hit, as if the note were a hand brushing sleep from her eyes. Suspense turned into geometry. Unknown craft decelerating into the system on a gravity rail, velocity bleeding like a wound. The escort Central promised was 3 hours away. The thing that wanted its song back would be here in 40 minutes. Maeve sealed the med bay and armed 2 turrets she didn't believe in. The AI asked if it should wake the ship. "Wake the ship," she said, and then went to sit beside Elias and the baby, because some battles are better fought with your shoulder touching someone who remembers what gentleness is for. At 19 minutes, The unknown craft crossed the orbit of the cold moon and unfolded like a flower that had evolved in a war. It wasn't built so much as grown, lattice and membranes. Surfaces that once had been the insides of something living and now were hull by consent. It circled, listening. Elias whispered to Nova about Earth rain because babies deserve ordinary details even when the sky is inventing new fears. Maeve opened a channel with the iron voice the Academy taught her and said, "You are entering human research space. Identify, state intent." The reply came not on comms but in the room, through the gentle pressure, changed the ear mistakes for weather. A figure stepped through the sealed medbay door, as if it were language. Tall, blade-thin, clothed in something the eye couldn't agree about. It carried no visible weapon, only a small bowl of light that held 3 notes like a nest. Its face managed the trick of being kind and terrifying. Elias moved without thinking, a man who'd forgotten himself, and put his body between the stranger and the crib. The stranger inclined its head, a bow that meant "We are not here to break you," and the bowl sang the flourish from the ping. Nova answered, by making a sound no human throat could make, a curl of syllables like water, learning to say thank you. The stranger spoke in a voice that felt like thinning ice. "We come for the child," it said, "and for the debt that attends the child. The Forge Waters opened a gate they did not own. We closed it. Balance must be kept." Maeve said this was a human vessel, under human law. The stranger's head tilted, curious, like a scientist who has met a new kind of gravity. "You found what fell out of someone else's storm," it said. "You will return the rain." Elias asked what would happen to Nova if they handed her back. The stranger did not say experiment. It did not say vivisection. It said custody, like a verdict given to a hallway. Nova's skin brightened, the faint light under her dermis swirling, as if listening. "She's imprinting," Elias whispered. "On us, on the music of us." The stranger took a step closer, and the air grew cold enough to make breath visible. The AI overrode medbay etiquette and spoke aloud. "Escort craft ETA, 28 minutes. Unknown vessel has capacity for micro-singularity deployment. Recommend non-kinetic options." Maeve stood very straight, because the world loves to negotiate with your posture. "You made your point," she told the stranger. "Now hear ours. You don't get to define debt for something that was born into falling." The stranger looked at Maeve with the ancient patience of teachers and monsters. It raised the bowl. The 3 notes inside retuned, became something that didn't sound like a lullaby anymore. Nova whimpered. Ilias's hand hovered over the cradle, helpless in a new way. The ship shuddered as the unknown's gravity finger tested Halcyon's bones. Somewhere far from medbay, a wrench fell, and the sound ran through the decks like a shouted word, "Getting tired?" Maeve walked forward into the thin cold and said, "I'll make you a trade." The stranger's attention pivoted and landed. "You could feel it like weather. You can hold the gate that eats this system," Maeve said. "You can stop the Forge Waters trick. But the child stays here until she can choose the sky she wants." The stranger didn't laugh. It didn't understand laugh in the middle of bargaining. "You cannot hold what you cannot name," it said. "This species makes tools for feeling. You would turn the child into a mirror." "No," Elias said, quietly stubborn, the way he fixed machines that had learned how to be ashamed. "Into a person." The bowl dimmed. The gravity finger withdrew. For one instant, the stranger looked tired. "You asked to carry a storm." Nova reached toward the light, webbed fingers opening like she'd learned the gesture from watching palms through glass. The stranger watched that too. "You are loud animals," it said, not unkindly. "Your kindness will bruise the world." Maeve felt something unclench in her chest that she hadn't known was a fist since the academy. "We know," she said. "We do it anyway." The stranger turned slightly, listening to a conversation only it could hear. Outside, the escort's drive wash zinged the far side of the system. The stranger set the bowl on the steel beside the crib, a gift or a trap. and stepped backward into the door that wasn't a door. "Balance," it said, and was gone. And the medbay smelled briefly of rain on hot stone. They didn't have time to celebrate surviving a myth. Central would arrive with questions shaped like handcuffs. The bowl kept singing, softly now, the 3 notes rotating like a child spinning with arms out. Nova's glow steadied, then curled into sleep. Maeve told the AI to deep archive every atom of the encounter, and then erase the surface logs that would invite the wrong kind of curiosity. Elias looked like men look when they've decided to become a country. "We can't give her back," he said, and Maeve didn't bother pretending she disagreed. "So we disappear carefully," she said. "We file a version with the boring verbs. We let Central come take fingerprints from the story we've already washed." The escort hailed them, voices crisp with fear, dressed as procedure. Maeve answered, with a professionally shaken tone, and the kind of details that make liars trustworthy. "Ice slippage. Minor Hall stress. A misread ping that turned out to be atmospheric resonance in a mineral canyon." While she spoke, Elias carried Nova's pod into the auxiliary bay and strapped it into a pitted cargo skiff that had belonged to a previous science officer who drank more than he filed. The AI plotted a path through the ring debris that looked like bad luck from every angle but one. "If you do this," the AI said, as if it loved them and knew it shouldn't, "I cannot call you back." Maeve signed the skiff out under a maintenance code and told Elias to go, to burn quiet, to aim for the little brown dwarf with the good hiding places. He shook his head. "You're coming." She shook hers. "I can talk the wolves into arguing with each other. You can keep a baby alive." Nova woke and made the water thank you sound, and the choice was the sort that has decided species before. Elias kissed Maeve's forehead through 2 layers of plastic and said the thing men say when they want to be brave and fail honestly: "Don't die." She grinned like a girl who had survived a lot of schools. "If I do, haunt somebody worth the fuel." The skiff launched with a cough disguised as a shadow. The escort docked and spilled uniforms like a box of knives. The bowl's 3 notes followed Elias into the dark like a lighthouse that had decided to move. Hiding is a craft. Elias learned it between feedings, between lullabies learned from playlists older than his father's hands. The skiff tucked itself into the brown dwarf's sleet, ran cold, ate noise. He built a cradle in the engineering bay out of heat exchangers and prayer and taught Nova to grip his finger with stubborn little tides. She learned faster than any human infant he'd read about. One morning he woke to find she had climbed calm as a tide to the viewport and pressed both hands against the stars as if asking them their names. He told her, one by one, in the simple vowels children deserve. On the 7th night, the bowl changed its song, and a map unfolded from the light. Not vector and velocity, but kinship and risk. He followed it to a derelict platform parked between wars, where the air tasted like old lightning and the vending machine still sold chips if you talked to it about football. He scavenged protein paste and blankets, and a second-hand fairy tale about a girl who told a riddle to Winter and won. Every 90 minutes, a whisper rode the skiff's hold the stranger's craft, passing far off, rounding the system like a shepherd that knows wolves have lawyers. Elias kept Nova's glow dim with a shield built from the skiff's hood in his jacket. When she cried, the cry vibrated the bowl, and the bowl answered in math. Sometimes she laughed, and the whole bay softened, as if metal were remembering wood. Suspense stayed faithful. A relay woke near Titan's old wake and listened too long. A patrol ping zipped past like a thrown coin, then came back the way coins don't. Elias stopped sleeping the way men stopped singing in rooms that hate music. And then Maeve's voice arrived on a courier tight beam, with the smell of coffee so sharp he cried. "Central thinks you died ironically," she said, Missouri calm wrapped in razor wire. I encouraged the rumor. The stranger's people filed something like a treaty. It blistered a dozen careers. If you can keep out of their maps for 2 months, the law might catch up to the truth. He asked if she was safe. When humans asked questions, they don't have one answer. She said she'd learned to enjoy disappointing committees. He told her. Nova had started making chords in her sleep. Maeve laughed, then went quiet, then said, "You're somebody's myth now. Don't betray the kid by being boring." The line ended with the clean click you get when a friend refuses to say goodbye. They didn't make it the full 2 months. One of the Forgewater's old gates spasmed near the dwarf. A ring of bruised gravity, coughing up a wreck full of ghosts, and a drone, still awake and loyal to dead men. It sniffed the skiff, sniffed again, and decided to bark. The bark was a distress code encoded in a dead ledger, in a language Elias hadn't been paid to learn. The stranger's vessel came quick and quiet. No threat displays, just the presence of a rule arriving. Elias held Nova to his chest and said, "Okay, new plan." He vented heat, rolled the skiff, presented the smallest possible lie to the biggest possible curiosity. The stranger stepped in through the bulkhead like promises do. This time it looked more tired, or perhaps Elias had learned to see tired on a face not built for his eyes. It did not lift the bowl. "You were offered balance," it said. "You chose weight." Elias said humans were built like that. The stranger cocked its head toward Nova. "She will choose for herself when she wakes to languish." "She's awake," Elias said, because he believed it and wanted it to be retroactively true. "Teach me the part I don't know," he added, because that's how men invite truce without kneeling. The stranger said its hand if hand was the word on the bowl. The light shifted. A fourth note wove into the three, the kind of harmony that hides unless you listen with your scars. Nova reached for it, caught the thread, and made a sound that was not human or alien but new, and the gate in the bruised gravity ringed like a bell that had just heard its own name. The drone stopped barking. The stranger's shoulders eased by a degree. "The Forgewaters seeded your sky with hungry doors," it said. "We have been closing them faster than they open." She and the stranger did something like swallow. She can teach the doors to forget they are mouths. Elias kissed the top of Nova's head and said, "Of course she can, the way fathers talk when they're daring the world to doubt them." The stranger looked at him with something that might have been respect and might have been sorrow for what respect costs. "When she is grown, she may hate you for making her a bridge." "When she is grown," Elias said, "she can tell me so to my face." The stranger turned away, and the hull flexed the way steel does when it wants to be a sail. "Very loud animals," it said, and vanished. And the bowl kept the fourth note like a secret you tell to the right person at the right table. Months later, when the treaty carved by exhaustion finally named Nova a ward of the Halcyon, and not a specimen of anyone's museum, they came home to a dock wearing flags that meant sorry in 50 dialects. Maeve stood on the gantry with a face she reserved for weddings she didn't trust and funerals that refused to stay dead. Nova, taller now in the ways that measure health, clearer gaze, steadier breath, reached for Maeve with both hands and made the water thank you. Maeve bowed, as if to a queen, and then picked her up like an ant who saves your life by changing the subject. The tribunal read out long paragraphs full of verbs that had learned how to be kind. Central's man tried to look like the sort of human who had always believed in babies. Elias shook 100 hands and washed them twice. The stranger's vessel hung at the edge of the sky like a parent who has moved into the neighborhood because the school is good. At sunset, when the flags got tired, Nova stood on the Halcyon's nose and sang the four-note song into the bones of the harbor. Out beyond the moon, 3 old gates closed like eyes deciding to trust sleep. Elias put his arm around Maeve's shoulder, and Maeve, professional skeptic, Law's favorite daughter, rested her head against him anyway. "You carried a storm," she said. "We did," he answered. In the years that followed, Nova learned earth rain and alien tides. She learned to make coffee that didn't taste like penance and 2-fold paper boats that always found the same shore. She learned words in both alphabets and a few that had to be invented because old ones bent under the new weight. When she asked who she was, nobody said specimen. they said child. When she asked who had sent the pod, Elias said some people think destiny is a trap, and some think it's a map, and most days it's just a note in a bottle with a bad sense of direction. When she asked what balance was, Maeve said it's what we call the beautiful mess after it stops scaring us. And when she asked where home was, the stranger came down to the dock and, very carefully, pointed at the place where her hand met Ilias's and said, right there. If you're asking what makes humans special, it isn't their guns or their engines, or the way they make flags out of anything that holds still. It's the way they hear a cry inside a storm, and decide the storm can be taught to sing. It's the way they bruise the world, with kindness until the bruise looks like a sunrise. It's the way they look at a child from another sky, and call her by a name that means future, and then stand between her and the ancient math that says she doesn't belong, and then keep standing when the math brings bigger friends. This is how species grow each other. This is how stories learn to carry more light. This is how a ship named Halcyona, word that means a calm, earned by surviving storms got its name right.